Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we dissect corporate documents. Today we are talking about main BuyWrite ETF's shareholder report, and let me tell you, after reading this, I'm considering writing my own call options and hopefully understand what they are. If you want to understand this with me, stick around. This report basically gives a snapshot of how the main BuyWrite ETF performed over the last 6 months from November of last year to April of this year. We'll break down the key numbers, what the fund invested in, and any big changes that happened. If you appreciate getting straight insights from corporate documents, make sure you're subscribed. We also have a Discord community linked in the description below. Come join us. Let's start with how much it costs to invest in this fund. Imagine you put $10,000 in the main BuyWrite ETF. Over the last 6 months, you would have paid $49 in costs. This works out to be 0.98% of your investment on an annualized basis. Next, let's look at some fund statistics. The fund's net assets total about $661.5 million. It has 15 different holdings. The advisory fee, which is what the fund pays to the people managing the money, is roughly $2.6 million. Finally, the portfolio turnover is 0%, meaning there wasn't much change in holdings. Now, let's dive into where the fund's money is actually invested. A whopping 96.2% is in exchange traded funds, or ETFs, which is basically a basket of stocks you can buy and sell like a single stock. Just 3.8% is in money market funds, which are very safe, low return investments. Looking at it another way, if we consider net assets, we see a few more details. They have liabilities that exceed other assets by negative 0.5%. They have negative 10% in equity options, which are contracts that give you the right to buy or sell stocks at a certain price. They have negative 0% in index options, which means very little. About 4.3% is in money market funds and 10.62% is in equity or stocks. So what are the top holdings? The biggest holding is iShares Core S&P 500 ETF, representing 52.7% of the fund's net assets. VanEck Semiconductor ETF is next at 12.3%, followed by Invesco on Nasdaq 5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%, and Communication Services Select Sector SPDR Fund is at 10.5%. And Communication Services Select Sector. Let's tackle some changes that have happened recently. Back in January of this year, the fund changed its transfer agent and custodian to State Street Bank and Trust Company. Also, at the end of February this year, the management fee was reduced from 0.95% to 0.90% of the fund's average daily net assets, and the fund's expense limitation was also lowered from 0.98% to 0.95%. Now, let's transition to the financial statements. Here we can see more specifics about the fund's investments. The fund has a considerable amount in communication services, 67.3 million. Consumer discretionary reaching 59.6 million, followed by Invesco Nasdaq totaling 76.7 million, and leading them is iShares Core S&P 500 ETF totaling 348.5 million. This comes up to about 729 million in exchange traded funds. Add that to the 28 million in money market funds, and then subtract 65.9 million for call options and 3.6 million in liabilities, and that leaves a net asset value of 61.4 million. Looking at assets and liabilities on April 30th, the fund's investments at value total about $731 million. After adding receivables and prepaid expenses, the total assets amount to roughly $733,000 and $155,000 for related parties, and finally $33,000 in other accrued expenses. All of these amounts to $71.7 million. This means that the net assets are roughly $645,000 investment advisory fees. Then an additional $55,000 for related parties, and finally $33,000 in other accrued expenses. All of these amounts to $71.7 million. This means that the net assets are roughly $661 million. The net asset value per share is about $13.56. Here's a look into the operations. Diving into the investment income section, the fund earned roughly $4.3 million in dividends and $254,000 in interests. However, the advisor waived approximately $184,000 in fees, leaving us with a net investment income of around $1.6 million. Now let's get into the realized and unrealized gains and losses. The fund showed a net realized gain of $71.2 million. The unrealized gain was $67.4 million, landing at a net increase of roughly $5.4 million. Lastly, let's zoom in on the shares. The fund sold 39 million shares and redeemed 30 million for a net increase of 8.9 million shares. Now let's look at the financial highlights. The net asset value at the end of the 6 months was about $13.56. The total return was 0.96%, and the portfolio turnover rate was effectively 0%. So after dissecting the report, what's my take? While fund management lowered fees and expense limitations, which is generally a positive sign for investors, it's essential to know whether these changes actually translate to better returns. Digging in may be required beyond just the promises. The real value comes from consistent above average performance, which this report alone can't guarantee. Alright, that's our breakdown of main BuyWrite ETF's latest filing. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.